My name is Cassandra Mitchell, and I'm 32 years old. When I spent $35,000 on a dream European vacation for my entire family after my big promotion, I never imagined standing frozen at JFK as my sister Allison smirked and said those words, "I forgot your ticket." The confusion in my eyes quickly transformed to horror as realization dawned. This wasn't forgetfulness, this was betrayal. Before I tell you what happened next, if you're watching this from anywhere in the world, hit subscribe and let me know in the comments if you've ever been betrayed by someone you loved. I've always been the family overachiever. While most people complain about their 40-hour work weeks, I've been pulling 60-plus hours consistently for the past 7 years as a marketing executive at one of New York's top advertising firms. The long nights, missed social events, and constant stress had finally paid off when my boss called me into her office 3 months ago. "Cassandra, we're promoting you to VP of Marketing," she announced, sliding a contract across her desk that included a salary increase that made my eyes widen. "You've earned this." Despite my demanding career, family has always been my anchor. Every Sunday, no matter how exhausted I was, I'd drive to my parents' house in New Jersey for dinner. We'd celebrate holidays together, call each other for advice, and generally maintained the kind of close relationship many of my colleagues envied. At least, that's what I thought. My sister Allison is 2 years younger than me. Growing up, she always seemed to be in my shadow. I was valedictorian, she was 10th in our class, I got a full scholarship to NYU, she attended community college, I landed my dream job, she hopped between retail positions. Our parents tried to be fair, but I often caught the look of disappointment in their eyes when they compared us. "Cassie's just naturally driven," they'd explain to relatives, while Allison stood silent beside them. "Allison has other talents." Those other talents primarily included manipulation and guilt-tripping. Allison mastered the art of playing victim, especially with our parents. When we were kids, if I received praise for an achievement, Allison would find a way to redirect attention to herself, suddenly developing a mysterious illness or creating some drama requiring immediate attention. As adults, her methods became more sophisticated but followed the same pattern. When I announced my promotion at Sunday dinner, everyone cheered and congratulated me, everyone except Allison, who managed a tight smile while twisting her wedding ring. Her husband Ryan squeezed her shoulder supportively. Later that evening, as I helped my mother with dishes, I overheard Allison in the living room, "I just wish I could give Mom and Dad nice things too. It's always Cassie." That's when the idea struck me. With my substantial bonus and salary increase, I could do something extraordinary for all of us, a luxury family vacation to Europe. The perfect way to celebrate my success while creating lasting memories together. I envisioned us strolling through London parks, sipping coffee at Parisian cafes, touring ancient Roman ruins, and watching Barcelona sunsets. That night, I began researching. For 3 months, I became obsessed with creating the perfect itinerary. I joined travel forums, consulted with agents, read countless reviews, and mapped out every detail. 4 countries, 14 days, 5-star accommodations throughout. No expense spared. This would be the trip of a lifetime. When I presented the fully formed plan at Sunday dinner, complete with printed itineraries in custom folders, my parents were speechless. "Cassandra, we can't accept this," my father said, emotion catching in his throat. "It's too much money." "Dad, I want to do this. Please let me give this to our family," I insisted. "I've already made all the bookings." My mother wiped away tears while my father hugged me tightly. Allison sat quietly, examining the itinerary. "London, Paris, Rome, Barcelona," she read aloud. "No Amsterdam? I've always wanted to see the tulips." "It's not tulip season, Allison," I explained patiently. "I chose destinations we all discussed wanting to visit." "I guess your choices are fine," she conceded with a shrug. "This is generous of you, Cassie." In the following weeks, I finalized every detail. I arranged private tours of the Vatican, secured tickets to a West End show in London, booked a sunset dinner cruise on the Seine, and reserved tables at Michelin-starred restaurants. I wanted everything to be perfect. During our planning meetings, Allison began showing subtle signs of resentment. She'd question my choices or suggest alternatives after I'd already made non-refundable bookings. "Wouldn't it be better to stay in this neighborhood instead?" she'd ask, pointing to an area I'd already researched and eliminated due to distance from attractions. "The hotel I booked has better reviews and includes breakfast," I'd explain. "If you say so," she'd respond with that patronizing tone that made me feel like I was somehow making a mistake. Despite these tensions, I remained excited about our upcoming adventure. This trip represented not just a celebration of my professional achievement but a chance to strengthen our family bonds. Looking back, I should have recognized the warning signs, but I was too caught up in my vision of the perfect family vacation to see what was coming. 1 week before our departure, I hosted a family dinner at my apartment to finalize all details. I'd prepared a folder for each person containing their flight information, hotel confirmations, tour vouchers, and a daily itinerary. I'd even included restaurant recommendations, shopping guides, and currency conversion cheat sheets. "You've thought of everything," my father said admiringly, flipping through his folder. My mother nodded in agreement. "This is so organized, Cassie. I don't know how you managed all this with your work schedule." I beamed with pride. The hours spent researching and planning had been worth it just for this moment of appreciation. Allison, however, was frowning at the itinerary. 3 hours at the Louvre seems excessive," she commented. "And why are we wasting time at the British Museum when we could be shopping at Harrods?" "The British Museum houses some of the world's most significant artifacts," I explained, trying to keep my tone neutral. "But we have free time in the afternoon if you'd prefer to shop." "I'm just saying we should have more flexibility," Allison continued. "Not everyone wants to follow your rigid schedule." "Allison," my father intervened, "your sister has put a lot of work into this. Let's be grateful." "I am grateful," she replied defensively. "I'm just making suggestions." Ryan, who had been quiet throughout dinner, finally spoke up. "Maybe Allison has a point. We don't want to feel like we're on a forced march through Europe." I felt a familiar sting of frustration. Despite funding the entire trip, my carefully crafted plans were being criticized. Still, I wanted everyone to enjoy themselves, so I reluctantly agreed to build in more flexible time. "Fine," I conceded. "I'll adjust some things. But the hotel reservations and tour bookings can't be changed at this point." My mother, ever the peacekeeper, quickly changed the subject. "What about trip insurance? Did you purchase that?" "Yes, we're fully covered," I assured her. "I printed out all the policy information and included it in your folders." "And we all have our passports ready?" my father asked. Everyone nodded. "What about the physical tickets and vouchers?" Allison asked suddenly. "Shouldn't someone be in charge of keeping all those together?" Before I could respond, she continued, "I can hold on to everything for everyone. I have a special travel organizer." I hesitated. I had planned to keep all documentation myself since I had arranged everything, but Allison seemed so eager to contribute. "That's nice of you to offer," I said carefully. "But I've organized everything by day in my travel portfolio." "Come on, Cassie," Allison pressed. "Let me help with something. You've done everything else." My mother gave me a meaningful look. "It would be good to give your sister some responsibility too." Against my better judgment, I relented. "Okay, I'll give you all the physical tickets and vouchers the night before we leave." Allison smiled triumphantly. "Perfect. I'll keep everything safe." The evening ended with excited chatter about our upcoming adventure, but I couldn't shake a nagging feeling of unease. As everyone prepared to leave, I overheard Allison whispering to Ryan in the hallway. "Deserves this trip more than she does anyway. Always showing off." I couldn't catch the rest, but her tone sent a chill through me. Still, I dismissed my concerns. We were family, after all. Despite our differences, I trusted Allison wouldn't do anything to jeopardize this trip I had invested so much in, financially and emotionally. The night before our departure, I called everyone to confirm our 9 a.m. meeting time at JFK Terminal 4. Everything set, my father confirmed. We're all packed and ready. Allison, do you have all the documentation? I asked. There was a brief pause before she answered. Yes, all safe and organized. Don't worry so much, Cassie. Something in her voice sounded off, a strange note of satisfaction that I couldn't quite place. Are you okay? I asked. You sound strange. I'm fine, she replied quickly. Just tired from packing. Some of us don't have personal assistants to help with everything. I ignored the jab. Okay, see you all tomorrow. I can't wait. After hanging up, I double-checked my own packing, making sure I had everything needed for our 2-week adventure. Despite the knot of anxiety in my stomach, likely just pre-travel nerves, I fell asleep excited about the family memories we were about to create. I had no idea that by this time tomorrow, my entire world would be shattered. I woke before my alarm, buzzing with excitement. The day had finally arrived, our European adventure was about to begin. I showered, dressed in my carefully planned travel outfit, comfortable yet stylish for the long flight, and triple-checked my carry-on essentials. My suitcases, packed and repacked multiple times over the past week, waited by the door. The Uber ride to JFK was a blur of anticipation. I texted my parents to confirm they were on their way and received an enthusiastic response complete with too many emojis from my mom. Allison didn't reply to my group message, but that wasn't unusual, she was notoriously bad at responding to texts. Terminal 4 was bustling with morning travelers when I arrived. I spotted my parents near the British Airways check-in area, waving enthusiastically as I approached. There she is, our world traveler, my father called out, pulling me into a bear hug. Can you believe we're actually going to Europe? My mother looked elegant in her travel attire, a guidebook already in hand. I couldn't sleep a wink last night. I'm so excited. Where's Allison and Ryan? I asked, checking my watch. It was 8:45 a.m., and they were cutting it close for our international flight. They just texted their parking, my mother assured me. They'll be here any minute. Sure enough, 5 minutes later, I spotted them walking through the terminal doors. Allison was wearing oversized sunglasses despite being indoors, and Ryan was pulling both their carry-ons. Something about their body language seemed off, Ryan looked tense, and Allison had a strange, almost smug expression. Sorry we're late, Allison said, though she didn't sound particularly apologetic. Traffic was horrible. We're still on time, I reassured her. Let's get checked in. We approached the check-in counter together, where a friendly agent greeted us. Good morning. Where are you flying to today? London Heathrow, I replied. We have 5 passengers. My father started loading our checked baggage onto the scale while I turned to Allison. Can you get out the tickets and passports? Allison nodded, opening her large designer handbag and removing a leather travel wallet. She handed passports and boarding passes to my parents and Ryan, then paused, rummaging deeper in her bag with a furrowed brow. That's strange, she muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. What is it? I asked, my stomach already beginning to tighten. Allison looked up at me, her expression a masterclass in feigned concern. I'm so sorry, Cassie. I think I forgot your ticket. Time seemed to freeze. What do you mean, you forgot my ticket? All the tickets were together in the travel wallet. I know, she said, still digging through her bag. I don't understand what happened. They were all together on my desk last night. The check-in agent looked at us sympathetically. Not to worry. If you have the reservation details, we can print a new boarding pass. Relief flooded through me. Of course. I pulled out my phone and opened the airline app, quickly logging in to access my reservation. That's when my blood ran cold. My name wasn't there. I refreshed the screen, thinking it must be a glitch. Nothing changed. According to the airline, I had no reservation. There must be some mistake, I said, my voice rising slightly. I booked everything myself. Let me check the confirmation emails. I frantically searched my email, finding the original booking that clearly showed 5 passengers, myself included. But when I opened the most recent confirmation sent just 2 days ago, my name was missing. I don't understand, I whispered, showing my phone to the agent. I was definitely booked on this flight. The agent typed something into her computer and frowned. It appears your reservation was cancelled 3 weeks ago, Ms. Mitchell. Cancelled? I echoed, disbelief giving way to confusion. That's impossible. I didn't cancel anything. I turned to Allison, who was now avoiding eye contact. A horrible suspicion began forming in my mind. Allison, I said slowly, what did you do? She finally removed her sunglasses, revealing eyes that held not confusion or concern, but defiance. You always get everything, she said quietly. The perfect job, the perfect apartment, Mom and Dad's constant approval. I deserve this trip more than you do. The terminal seemed to spin around me as her words sank in. You canceled my reservation? On purpose? My parents gasped in unison. Ryan shifted uncomfortably but remained silent. I changed the plans a little, Allison admitted, her voice eerily calm. You're always in control of everything. For once, I wanted to be in charge. In charge? I repeated incredulously. This is a trip I planned. That I paid for. The check-in agent, clearly uncomfortable, interjected gently. Perhaps you'd like to continue this discussion privately? I can check if there are any available seats on today's flight. We moved away from the counter to a quiet corner of the terminal. My hands were shaking with rage and disbelief. How could you do this? I demanded, tears threatening to spill. Do you have any idea how much work I put into planning this trip? How much money I spent? Allison crossed her arms defensively. You can afford it. You make sure everyone knows how successful you are. That's not fair, my father interrupted, his face flushed with anger. Your sister worked hard for her success, and she was generous enough to share it with all of us. Always taking her side, Allison muttered. My mother placed a hand on my arm. Cassie, I'm sure we can fix this. There must be seats available. But deep down, I knew. It was peak summer travel season to Europe. The flights had been fully booked when I made our reservations months ago. I pulled out my phone again and called the airline's customer service, stepping away from my family for privacy. After several minutes of explaining the situation and being placed on hold, the agent delivered the news I dreaded. I'm very sorry, Ms. Mitchell, but there are no available seats on today's flight or any flights to London for the next 3 days. The summer season is our busiest time. I thanked her mechanically and ended the call, returning to my family with a numbness spreading through my chest. There's nothing available, I announced flatly. Not for 3 days. Allison had the audacity to look thoughtful. Well, I suppose you could join us later then. Join you later? I repeated, my voice rising. And miss half the trip that I planned and paid for? An uncomfortable silence fell over our group. My parents exchanged worried glances. Maybe we should all postpone, my father suggested hesitantly. Allison immediately protested. We can't postpone. We have non-refundable bookings. And Ryan already arranged time off work. Those non-refundable bookings were paid for by me, I reminded her, my patience completely evaporated. Cassie, my mother said gently, maybe it would be best if we proceeded as planned, and you could fly out when a seat becomes available. We could adjust the itinerary. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own mother was suggesting they continue with the trip without me. Are you serious right now? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. You're actually considering going without me? My father looked torn. It's just, the money that would be lost. The money that I spent, I finished for him. I looked at each of their faces, my father's conflicted expression, my mother's pleading eyes, Ryan's studied neutrality, and finally, Allison's barely concealed satisfaction. In that moment, I realized a painful truth: they were going to choose Allison's manipulation over my feelings. Again. Final boarding call for British Airways Flight 178 to London Heathrow, the announcement echoed through the terminal. "We need to go," Allison said, picking up her carry-on. "We'll call you when we land, Cassie." My parents hesitated, clearly uncomfortable but not stopping her. "We'll send photos," my mother offered weakly. "And maybe you can join us in Paris?" I stood frozen as they gathered their belongings. My father squeezed my shoulder apologetically before following my mother toward security. Ryan nodded awkwardly in my direction, then hurried after them. Allison lingered last, adjusting her designer sunglasses. "Try not to be so controlling next time," she advised, as if imparting wisdom. "It doesn't always have to be the Cassandra show." Then she was gone, disappearing into the security checkpoint, leaving me standing alone surrounded by my carefully packed luggage, watching my family, and my $35,000, walk away without a backward glance. I stood frozen for what felt like eternity, watching my family's retreating forms until they disappeared through security. Then, a surge of anger propelled me forward. This wasn't over. I refused to let Allison's manipulation succeed so easily. I rushed to the nearest information desk. "I need to speak with my family before they board. It's an emergency." The sympathetic attendant made a call, and miraculously, my family was intercepted at the gate and directed to a private airport lounge. When I arrived, they were seated awkwardly around a small table, their carry-ons creating a barrier between us. "What is this about, Cassandra?" my father asked wearily. "We're going to miss the flight." "Good," I replied, my voice shaking with suppressed rage. "Because we need to talk about what just happened." Allison rolled her eyes. "We already discussed this. There's nothing we can do." "Nothing you can do?" I repeated incredulously. "You caused this. I want to know exactly what you did and when you did it." The room fell silent. Ryan studied his shoes while my parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. "Fine," Allison finally said, crossing her arms. 3 weeks ago, I accessed your reservation and removed your name. Happy now?" Her casual admission stunned me. "How did you even access my booking?" "You saved all the login details in that shared folder you created for trip planning," she explained with a shrug. It wasn't exactly Fort Knox. I had created that folder to keep everyone informed, never imagining someone would use it against me. "Why?" I demanded, my voice cracking. "Why would you do this?" "Because I'm tired of living in your shadow." Allison exploded. "Everything is always about you, your promotion, your success, your generosity. This way, for once, I get to be the center of attention. I get to be the one showing mom and dad around Europe, not you." My mother gasped. "Allison, that's a terrible thing to say." "And to do. Is it?" Allison challenged. "You two have always favored Cassie. Why can't you be more like your sister? Look how successful Cassie is. Do you have any idea what that's been like for me?" "So this is revenge?" I asked, incredulous. "You sabotaged a family vacation that I spent $35,000 on because you're jealous?" "It's not about the money," Allison snapped. "You can afford it with your fancy VP salary. It's about always being second best." "This isn't about our childhood," I countered. "This is about you deliberately hurting me. And mom and dad are just going to let you get away with it, like they always do." My father finally spoke up. "That's not fair, Cassandra." "Isn't it?" I challenged. "When we were kids and Allison ruined my science project because she was jealous I was going to the state finals, what happened?" "Nothing." "When she accidentally spilled punch on my prom dress?" "Nothing." "When she told my college boyfriend I was cheating on him because she was jealous he took me to Paris for spring break?" "Nothing." There's always an excuse for Allison's behavior, and I'm always expected to forgive and forget. My parents looked genuinely shocked, as if hearing this litany of offenses for the first time. We never realized. My mother began. Because you never wanted to see it, I finished for her. It was easier to pretend everything was fine. Ryan finally spoke up. Look, I think everyone's getting too emotional. The fact is, we have non-refundable bookings and a flight about to leave. We need to make a practical decision. A practical decision? I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. Let me make this very simple for you. If you get on that plane without me, our relationship will never be the same. Any of you. The ultimatum hung in the air. You can't be serious, Allison said, but I detected a note of uncertainty in her voice. I've never been more serious in my life, I replied. This isn't a tantrum. This is a boundary. You deliberately sabotaged something important to me, and now you all have a choice to make. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. My father cleared his throat. Perhaps we should all take a step back. No, I interrupted. No more avoiding the issue. I want each of you to decide, right now, what's more important, enabling Allison's manipulative behavior or standing up for what's right. The final boarding call for their flight echoed through the terminal. My mother reached for my hand. Cassie, please understand. It's not that simple. I withdrew my hand. Actually, it is that simple. Either you recognize that what Allison did was wrong and take a stand, or you go with her and send a clear message about where I stand in this family. Allison stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. I'm not missing this trip because Cassie's throwing a fit. We need to go now if we're going to make the flight. She grabbed her carry-on and looked expectantly at the others. Ryan immediately stood, avoiding eye contact with me. My father hesitated, then slowly rose to his feet. Cassie, we can work this out when we return. I promise we'll address everything then. I felt like I'd been slapped. So that's your choice? It's not a choice between you and Allison, he insisted. It's just the practical thing to do right now. My mother remained seated, tears streaming down her face. I don't know what to do. Mom, Allison called impatiently from the doorway. We have to go now. After a moment's hesitation, my mother squeezed my hand once more, then stood and collected her belongings. I'm so sorry, Cassie. We'll make this up to you somehow. I watched in stunned silence as my mother joined the others at the door. Only my father looked back, his expression a mixture of guilt and resignation. We'll call you when we land, he promised, as if that could possibly fix what had just been broken. Then they were gone, hurrying toward their gate, leaving me alone in the empty lounge with the devastating knowledge that when forced to choose, my entire family had chosen Allison's manipulation over my feelings. I sank into a chair, the full weight of betrayal crushing my chest. Tears flowed freely as I realized that the family I thought I knew, the family I had worked so hard to please and support, had never truly existed at all. I don't remember leaving the airport lounge. Somehow I found myself in a quiet corner of the terminal, surrounded by my luggage, staring blankly at departures board as flight BA-178 to London changed from boarding to departed. My family was officially in the air, heading to Europe without me, using tickets I had purchased, staying in hotels I had booked, and following an itinerary I had meticulously planned. The crushing weight of betrayal made it difficult to breathe. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother, we made the flight. We'll call when we land. Love you. Love. The word seemed hollow now. What kind of love allows someone to treat you this way? What kind of love chooses the path of least resistance over standing up for what's right? I turned off my phone, unable to bear any more communication from them. Tears streamed down my face as I sat alone amidst the bustling terminal, travelers rushing past, oblivious to my personal apocalypse. A middle-aged woman paused briefly, offering me a tissue with a sympathetic smile before continuing on her way. The kindness of this stranger somehow broke through my numbness, triggering a flood of emotions I could no longer contain. I gathered my bags and made my way to a restroom, locking myself in a stall where I finally allowed myself to completely break down. Years of suppressed hurt and disappointment poured out in heaving sobs that seemed to come from the depths of my soul. When I had no tears left, I splashed cold water on my face and stared at my reflection in the mirror. I barely recognized the devastated woman looking back at me. This wasn't the confident VP of marketing who commanded boardrooms and led campaigns. This was a wounded child still desperately seeking approval from people who would never truly give it. I needed to talk to someone who actually cared about me. With trembling hands, I turned my phone back on and called Madison, my best friend since college. "Cass? Aren't you supposed to be over the Atlantic right now?" she answered cheerfully. "Maddie," I managed, my voice breaking. "Everything's gone wrong." "What happened? Are you okay?" Concern immediately replaced her cheerfulness. I poured out the whole story, from Allison's manipulation to my family's betrayal. Madison listened without interrupting, occasionally making sounds of disbelief and outrage. "Those absolute bastards," she declared when I finished. "I never liked your sister, but this is a new low. And your parents just went along with it? That's unforgivable." Her validation was like oxygen to my suffocating soul. I wasn't overreacting. This wasn't normal family drama. "What am I supposed to do now, Maddie?" "I took 2 weeks off work. I have no plans. My family is gone. I'm just alone." There was a brief silence before Madison spoke again, her voice suddenly animated. "Why should they get to enjoy Europe while you sit at home miserable? That's exactly what your sister wants." "What are you suggesting?" I asked. "Take your own trip," she said simply. "You're already packed. You have time off. Don't let them win by being miserable. Go somewhere alone?" The idea seemed both terrifying and oddly appealing. "Why not? You spent your whole life considering everyone else. Maybe it's time you did something just for you." As her words sank in, something shifted inside me. Why shouldn't I go somewhere? Why should I waste my vacation days sitting at home nursing my wounds while my family enjoyed the fruits of my labor? But where would I go? I wondered aloud. "Anywhere but where they're going," Madison replied firmly. "This is your chance to do exactly what you want without having to consider anyone else's preferences or needs." For the first time since arriving at the airport that morning, I felt a tiny spark of something other than devastation, possibility. "I've always wanted to see Greece," I admitted. "The islands, the ancient ruins, the food," but Allison said it was too hot in summer and too focused on history. "Then Greece it is," Madison declared. "Let me know your flight details when you book them. And Cass? Take lots of pictures. Living well is the best revenge." After hanging up, I sat for a moment, considering this radical shift in plans. Could I really do this? Travel alone to a foreign country with no planning or preparation? I pulled out my tablet and opened a travel booking site. There was a flight to Athens leaving that evening with seats available. Before I could overthink it, I entered my credit card information and booked a one-way ticket. The confirmation email arrived seconds later. Next, I researched hotels. Instead of the practical, family-friendly accommodations I'd booked for our European tour, I selected a boutique luxury hotel in Athens with a rooftop pool overlooking the Acropolis. The suite cost more per night than I'd typically spend, but I had saved money on 4 airline tickets to London. As I completed the hotel reservation, a strange sensation bubbled up inside me: liberation. For the first time in my adult life, I was making plans based solely on what I wanted, with no need to compromise or consider others' preferences. I had one last task before my impulsive journey could begin. I composed a text message to my family's group chat. "I hope you enjoy the trip I planned and paid for. I'd decided to take my own vacation. Don't worry about contacting me, I'll be busy discovering what it feels like to put myself first for once. See you in 2 weeks." I hit send, then turned off my phone completely. Whatever their response, I didn't want to hear it. This time was for me. With 6 hours until my flight to Athens, I wheeled my luggage to the international terminal. As I settled in a cafe with a much-needed glass of wine, I felt the weight of expectations and family dynamics begin to lift. The pain was still there, raw and throbbing, but alongside it was something unexpected, a boarding pass to Athens and the first fragile shoots of freedom. The flight to Athens was a blur of fitful sleep and half-watched movies. I fluctuated between moments of empowered excitement and waves of hurt so intense they took my breath away. By the time we landed at Athens International Airport, I was exhausted but determined to embrace this unexpected solo adventure. Stepping out of the airport into the warm Greek morning, I was immediately enveloped by unfamiliar sounds, smells, and sights. Without my family to manage or an itinerary to follow, I felt momentarily adrift. Then I remembered, this was freedom, not abandonment. I could go anywhere, do anything, without considering anyone else's preferences or needs. The taxi ride to my hotel offered my first glimpse of Athens, a fascinating juxtaposition of ancient and modern, with millennia-old ruins standing proudly amidst a bustling contemporary city. The driver, a gregarious middle-aged man named Nikos, pointed out landmarks as we navigated narrow streets. "First time in Greece?" he asked, meeting my eyes in the rearview mirror. "Yes," I admitted. "It was a last-minute decision." "The best journeys often are," he replied with a knowing smile. "You are traveling alone?" A week ago, I would have found the question intrusive. Now, I simply nodded. "Then you will truly see Greece," he declared. "When we travel with others, we see them as much as the destination. Alone, you will see Athens, and perhaps yourself." His words stayed with me as I checked into my hotel, a beautifully restored neoclassical building in the historic Plaka district. My suite was a far cry from the practical family accommodations I'd booked for our European tour, elegant, indulgent, and designed for pleasure rather than practicality. Standing on my private balcony overlooking the Acropolis, I felt a surge of conflicting emotions. The view was breathtaking, but there was no one to share it with. For a moment, loneliness threatened to overwhelm me. Then I reminded myself. This was my choice, my journey. I didn't need validation from anyone else to appreciate this moment. That first day, I allowed myself to wander aimlessly through the ancient streets of Plaka, stopping whenever something caught my interest: a tiny jewelry shop, a street musician playing bouzouki, a cafe with tables spilling onto a cobblestone square. Without an itinerary to follow or family members to accommodate, I moved at my own pace, guided solely by curiosity. By late afternoon, I found myself at the foot of the Acropolis. I had planned to visit the following day, but why wait? I purchased a ticket and began the climb up the marble steps, joining the stream of visitors ascending toward the Parthenon. Standing amidst the ancient columns, I was struck by their resilience. Despite centuries of war, weather, and human interference, they remained, damaged but unbowed. There was a metaphor there that wasn't lost on me. Lost in thought, I didn't notice the woman beside me until she spoke. "Incredible, isn't it? Makes our problems seem pretty small." I turned to find a woman about my age, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, a professional camera hanging around her neck. "I'm Eliza," she continued, extending her hand. "From New York." "Cassandra," I replied, shaking it. "Also from New York, actually." "No kidding. What brings you to Athens? Business or pleasure?" The question was innocent enough, but it opened a floodgate. To my horror, I found myself blurting out the entire story: the planned family trip, Allison's betrayal, my impulsive decision to come to Greece instead. It was mortifying to unload on a complete stranger, but once I started, I couldn't stop. Eliza listened without interruption, her expression shifting from surprise to outrage. "Your sister did what?" she exclaimed when I finally finished. "That's beyond sibling rivalry, that's sociopathic." Her validation was unexpectedly cathartic. "I'm still processing it all," I admitted. "One minute I feel liberated, the next I'm overwhelmed with hurt." "Both are totally valid," Eliza assured me. Listen, a bunch of us solo travelers are meeting for dinner at this amazing taverna tonight. Why don't you join us? Beats eating alone, and we've all got our stories. Under normal circumstances, I might have declined. I wasn't typically one for spontaneous social gatherings with strangers. But nothing about this trip was normal, so why start now? I'd like that, I said, surprising myself. That evening, I found myself at a rustic taverna in a quiet corner of Plaka, surrounded by 5 other solo travelers from across the globe: Eliza from New York, Marco from Italy, Sophie from Australia, Javier from Spain, and Ingrid from Sweden. Over plates of grilled octopus, fresh Greek salad, and flowing retsina, we shared our stories. I came to Greece after my divorce, Sophie revealed. Needed to remember who I was before I became someone's wife. I quit my job, Marco added. 15 years in finance, and one day I realized I hadn't seen the sun in months. Their candor encouraged my own. I shared my airport ordeal, expecting sympathy but receiving something more valuable: perspective. Your sister did you a favor, Ingrid declared, refilling my wine glass. She freed you from playing the role you've been stuck in your whole life. Family dynamics are like scripts we keep performing without questioning, Javier added. Sometimes it takes something dramatic to break the pattern. Their words resonated in ways I hadn't expected. Perhaps this betrayal, painful as it was, had freed me from patterns I hadn't even recognized. The evening ended with plans to meet for a boat trip to Aegina Island the following day. As I walked back to my hotel under the Athenian stars, I realized I hadn't checked my phone once during dinner. My family's drama, which had consumed me for so long, had receded, if only temporarily. The next morning, I awoke to multiple messages from my family. My mother had sent concerned texts: "Are you okay? Where are you?" My father's message was more direct: "This isn't like you, Cassandra. Please be reasonable." Allison, predictably, had managed to make it about herself: "I can't believe you're trying to ruin our trip with your drama." I deleted them all without responding and turned off notifications. Then I grabbed my newly purchased wide-brimmed hat and headed to Piraeus Port to meet my new friends. The boat trip to Aegina marked the beginning of what would become the most transformative 2 weeks of my life. Each day brought new discoveries, not just of ancient temples and hidden beaches, but of myself. I discovered a passion for photography I'd never explored, spending hours capturing the interplay of light and shadow on weathered marble and across the Aegean Sea. Eliza, a professional photographer, taught me to use my phone camera in ways I'd never imagined, and I found myself seeing the world through a new lens, both literally and figuratively. "You've got a good eye," she commented as we reviewed my photos of sunset over Santorini, where we'd impulsively decided to spend 3 days. "You notice details others miss." "I've always been observant," I admitted. "But in my corporate life, that's channeled into identifying problems to fix or opportunities to exploit. This is different, seeing beauty without agenda." Our impromptu travel group expanded and contracted as we moved through the Greek islands. Some members peeled off to continue their journeys elsewhere, while new faces joined temporarily. I learned to embrace the fluid nature of these connections, appreciating them without clinging to them. One evening in Crete, I found myself sharing a bottle of local wine with Nicholas, a Greek tour guide I'd met during a hike through Samaria Gorge. Unlike the brief holiday flirtations I'd observed others enjoying, our connection was built on conversation rather than attraction. "You Americans," he mused, "always rushing, always achieving. What are you all running toward?" It was a question I'd never seriously considered. "Security, I suppose. Success. Validation. And has it made you happy?" he asked simply. The question lingered with me long after we parted ways. 10 days into my Greek odyssey, I received a series of increasingly desperate messages from my family. Their perfect European tour was unraveling. My parents and Allison were fighting constantly. The hotels I'd booked weren't meeting Allison's expectations. The carefully planned itinerary was falling apart without me there to coordinate everything. "Please call us," my mother pleaded. "This trip is a disaster. Allison and Dad aren't speaking. A week earlier, these messages would have elicited immediate concern, perhaps even satisfaction that they were struggling without me. Now, I felt only a detached compassion. Their dysfunction was no longer my responsibility to manage. I didn't respond. Instead, I extended my stay in Santorini for another week, canceling my return flight to New York. The corporate world had survived without me this long, it could manage another week. My final evening in Greece found me seated beside an elderly woman at a small taverna in a remote corner of Santorini. Maria was in her 80s, her face a roadmap of laugh lines and sorrows, her English accented but fluent. "You look different than when you arrived," she observed, sipping her ouzo. "Lighter." "I feel different," I acknowledged. This trip wasn't what I planned, but maybe it was what I needed. "Sometimes the universe gives us what we need, not what we want," she replied. "My husband died 30 years ago. I thought my life was over. Instead, it was just beginning. I traveled, I painted, I loved again. The pain doesn't disappear, but it transforms into something else if you let it." "What does it transform into?" I asked. Her smile was radiant. "Wisdom, child. The understanding that pain is not the enemy of joy but its companion. One teaches us to truly appreciate the other." As the Aegean sunset painted the white buildings gold, I realized that the betrayal that had brought me to this moment had indeed transformed. The hurt remained, but alongside it had grown something new, a sense of self separate from my family's expectations and dynamics. For perhaps the first time in my adult life, I was making choices based not on obligation or expectation, but on genuine desire. My phone buzzed with one final text from my mother: "We land at JFK tomorrow at 2 p.m. Please meet us. We need to talk." For once, I knew exactly what I needed to do. The familiar chaos of JFK Airport greeted me as I waited in the international arrivals area. After 3 transformative weeks in Greece, having extended my trip by an additional week, I had returned to New York just 2 days earlier. Now I stood watching the arrivals board as my family's flight from Barcelona showed landed. I looked different than when I'd left. My skin was sun-kissed, my hair lightened by the Mediterranean sun, and I'd traded my typical structured business attire for a flowing sundress purchased in a Santorini boutique. But the most significant changes weren't visible from the outside. My phone had been relatively quiet during the flight, but my mother had sent one final text before takeoff: "Can't wait to see you. So much to talk about." The anticipation of this reunion had kept me awake most of the night. I wasn't sure what to expect or how I would react to seeing them again. The hurt hadn't disappeared, but it had transformed into something else, a clear-eyed understanding of our family dynamic and my place within it. The doors to customs opened, and passengers began streaming through. I spotted them immediately, my parents looking exhausted, Ryan trailing behind with the luggage, and Allison, her designer sunglasses firmly in place despite being indoors. They hadn't noticed me yet. I observed them for a moment, struck by how different they appeared to me now. Not physically, they looked exactly as they had 3 weeks ago, but I was seeing them through new eyes. They seemed smaller somehow, less intimidating. My mother spotted me first, her face lighting up with relief. "Cassie! You came!" She rushed forward, enveloping me in a tight hug that smelled of airplane and her familiar perfume. My father joined the embrace, his voice gruff with emotion. "We weren't sure you'd be here." Only Allison hung back, her expression unreadable behind her sunglasses. Ryan nodded awkwardly in my direction. "Let's go somewhere we can talk," I suggested, leading them to a quiet coffee shop in the terminal. Once seated with drinks in front of us, an uncomfortable silence fell over the table. I waited, curious to see who would speak first and what they would say. "Cassie," my mother finally began, "words can't express how sorry we are for what happened. The trip was a complete disaster," my father added. "Nothing went according to plan. We missed you terribly," my mother continued, reaching for my hand across the table. "And we realized how wrong we were to leave without you." I listened without interrupting, noting what they weren't saying, There was no mention of Allison's deliberate sabotage or their choice to enable her behavior. "Where did you go?" my father asked. "Your messages were pretty vague." "Greece," I replied. "Athens, then the islands." "It was beautiful." "Alone?" my mother asked, concern creasing her forehead. "Initially," I said. "Then I met some other travelers. We explored together." Allison finally removed her sunglasses, revealing red-rimmed eyes. "Was it good?" she asked, her voice lacking its usual edge. "It was transformative," I answered honestly. "Not what I planned, but exactly what I needed." Another silence fell, heavier this time. "Cassandra," my father said, leaning forward, "we need to apologize properly. What happened at the airport, what Allison did, how we responded, it was all wrong. We should have stood up for you." I nodded, acknowledging his words without rushing to absolve them. "The trip was a nightmare," Allison admitted suddenly. "Nothing worked the way it was supposed to. The hotels kept saying they needed the person who made the reservation. Tours got mixed up. Nobody knew what we were doing from one day to the next. I thought you were in charge," I couldn't resist pointing out. Allison flinched. "I deserved that. And worse." She took a deep breath. "I've been seeing a therapist online while we were traveling. 3 sessions so far. I know it's not enough to fix everything. But I'm starting to understand why I did what I did. This was unexpected." In all our years of conflict, Allison had never acknowledged her behavior, let alone sought help for it. "What did you learn?" I asked, genuinely curious. "That I've been competing with a version of you that doesn't exist," she said quietly. "I built you up as this perfect person who gets everything, and myself as the perpetual victim. It was easier than admitting I was making choices that kept me stuck." Her vulnerability was disarming. For the first time in years, maybe ever, I was hearing my sister speak without manipulation or defensiveness. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she continued. "What I did was unforgivable. But I wanted you to know I'm working on myself." I studied her face, searching for signs of the familiar manipulation. Instead, I saw something new, genuine remorse. "I appreciate that," I said carefully. "But you're right, I'm not ready to forgive yet. Trust takes time to rebuild once it's broken." My parents exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret. "We've been doing some soul-searching too," my mother admitted. "About how we've enabled Allison's behavior over the years at your expense. It wasn't fair to either of you. We thought we were keeping the peace," my father added. "But we were actually making things worse." I took a sip of my coffee, allowing their words to sink in. 3 weeks ago, this acknowledgement would have been everything I wanted. Now, it felt important but no longer essential to my well-being. "I've done some thinking too," I told them. "About my role in our family dynamic. I've been seeking your approval my entire life, trying to be perfect, taking care of everyone. It's exhausting, and it's not healthy." "What are you saying?" my mother asked, a note of anxiety in her voice. "I'm saying that things need to change," I replied. "I'm not cutting you out of my life, but I am establishing some boundaries. I won't be joining Sunday dinners every week anymore, maybe once a month instead. I won't be the one who always makes all the plans and pays for everything. And I need you all to respect when I say no." The silence that followed was thick with uncertainty. "What about the holidays?" my mother finally asked in a small voice. "We'll figure it out," I assured her. "But it might look different than it has in the past." My father nodded slowly. "That seems fair. We've taken you for granted." Allison had been quiet, absorbing my words. "Do you think we could ever have a real relationship?" she asked. "As sisters, I mean. Not competitors." I considered her question carefully. "I hope so. But it will take time and consistent effort from both of us." Ryan, who had been silent throughout the exchange, finally spoke. "For what it's worth, I think this is long overdue. All of it." He glanced at Allison. We need to work on some things too. 3 months later, we gathered for dinner at my parents' house. It wasn't Sunday, I had maintained that boundary, but a Friday evening that worked for everyone's schedule. The dynamic was noticeably different. My mother had stopped calling me daily with minor crises. My father had begun setting boundaries with Allison when she slipped into old patterns. And Allison, true to her word, was continuing therapy. "I've got something to share," I announced after dinner, connecting my phone to the TV. Photos from my trip. As images of sun-drenched Greek islands, ancient ruins, and smiling new friends filled the screen, I narrated my unexpected journey. There was Nicholas teaching me about Greek mythology on a hillside overlooking the sea. Eliza and our other travel companions raising glasses of ouzo and a toast. Sunrise from my hotel balcony in Santorini. "You look happy," my mother observed, studying a photo of me laughing as waves crashed around my ankles on a black sand beach. I confirmed. I discovered I enjoy traveling alone. In fact, I'm planning another solo trip for spring. "Where to?" my father asked. "Japan. Cherry blossom season." Allison was examining the photos closely. "You took these? They're really good." "Thanks," I said, genuinely pleased by her compliment. "I've actually started selling some of my travel photography online. Just as a side project." "That's amazing, Cassie," she said, and for once, there was no undercurrent of resentment in her voice. As the evening wound down, I found myself alone in the kitchen with Allison, loading the dishwasher together in a companionable silence that would have been unimaginable 4 months ago. "I want you to know," she said suddenly, "I'm proud of you. Not just for your job or success, but for standing up for yourself. With me. With all of us." The words I'd longed to hear from her for years now brought a gentle warmth rather than desperate validation. "Thank you," I said simply. "And I'm sorry," she continued. "Not just for the trip, but for all of it. Years of trying to tear you down instead of building myself up." I handed her a plate to load. "We can't change the past. But we can choose how we move forward." Later that night, as I prepared for bed in my own apartment, I reflected on how much had changed since that devastating day at the airport. The betrayal that had seemed like the end of my world had instead become the beginning of a new one, a world where I defined my worth, set my boundaries, and charted my own course. My phone pinged with a message from Eliza. "Japan in spring? Count me in. Nicholas says he knows a great guide in Kyoto." I smiled, typing a quick response before turning out the light. The painful lesson from that airport betrayal had led me to a simple but profound truth: sometimes, getting left behind is the first step to finding your true path. So here's my question for you: have you ever experienced a betrayal that ultimately led you to something better? Comment below and share your story. If you've enjoyed this journey with me, please hit the like button, subscribe for more content, and share with someone who might need to hear this message. Thank you all for your amazing support, and remember, sometimes the most beautiful destinations aren't on any planned itinerary.